Good.
Of you going down.
Well, welcome to the podcast, guys. So just for our audience, this is a couple of good friends from school. We're pleasure to have them over tonight. Just gonna have some whiskey.
This episode is sponsored by Bullet.
Yep. And yeah, just talk about all good things that come to mind and take it from there. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So you may have heard that when we are just starting up that this was might get intense. So uh, the first topic we might dive into is evolution.
Yes, it is.
Evolution. So first take.
Well, apparently we disagree.
Very much.
Apparently, I thought this would be one thing that we would agree
no,
on.
no, we don't.
Okay.
Granted, we do believe on the important thing.
What is the important thing?
Let me see. Intelligent design
Hmm.
and intelligent design and man being a spiritual creature just as much as he is a physical animal.
Mhm.
And that's the parameters that the magisterium has set up for belief.
Mhm.
And so we both agree on that, and that's the important thing.
How do you know?
Well, if you don't believe in intelligent design or in directed evolution,
Yep.
then, well, you don't believe in God, pretty much.
How can you believe in evolution and God at the same time? Do you see a contradiction there?
No, I see no contradiction. In fact, I see it as evidence for God's existence.
That's an interesting take. Please
Well,
say more.
okay. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. One of the biggest, I know, one of the ways we can know the existence of God is by looking at creation.
Yeah.
Like how, like the order that is in creation shows an intelligent design. It does not come from chaos.
Mhm.
It comes from a mind.
Okay.
The mere fact that it's so grand
Mhm.
shows this omnipotent force behind it.
Yep.
And interesting to note, the early fathers talk about this, but also a lot of the I guess liberals in conservation also believe in some sort of deity because they're so close to the land that they can't imagine it not coming from some mind. Now, it's never the Judeo-Christian God. It's always some Eastern or some primitive religion thing because they, but the fact of the matter is, like, that's how creation shows the image of God. And so the fact that you could see a particular part of creation drawn in a line, and only that part of creation being oriented towards the crowning of creation, man.
Yep.
That just goes to show that God made creation for a certain reason. He didn't make all of creation intelligent or have the dignity of man or to be intelligent. He directed with his guiding hand almost against nature, but with nature, because God works through nature.
Yes.
That's how we know God is through nature. So he works through nature almost miraculously in the fact that it's the only part of nature that becomes the intelligent.
So I love that answer, but that doesn't answer why evolution. Because it's interesting that you brought up the church fathers, because all of them read Genesis literally.
Not all of them.
Most of them.
Most of them is not all of them.
But it's close to it.
But it's not all of them.
Okay. All right. Which ones didn't?
Augustine, I know.
Okay.
And actually, I could find 10 more, but I don't have them with me. I have a list of them because I had to bring this up with somebody once. I have a list of them and I can find it.
Yeah.
But there's several.
The majority of them read it literally.
There's
We
a
can
lot of
agree on
church
that.
fathers.
There are a lot of okay.
Okay,
Not getting into the nitty-gritty of it.
Okay.
Okay, that was a
but it's not unanimous for certain.
okay. That's true.
Mm.
Yes. Okay.
Not unanimous for certain.
Mhm.
Majority of them.
A good many
A
of
good
them,
a good many of them.
depending on how
read it
you
literally.
read how they were reading it. But okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so there's interpretation and their interpretation.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So your argument that you just gave, the fact that because there is a diversity in the world and it was ordered towards an intelligence,
Mhm.
I agree with that.
Mhm.
I don't see why that equals therefore evolution. Right? Because
That's not the argument I gave, though.
but you didn't give an argument for therefore evolution. You gave an argument for an intelligent design.
No, I gave.
Right? Which seems to be that there's an ordering in the world around us.
I gave an argument why evolution could point to the existence of God.
I did not see that in your argument. But maybe that was me.
Okay. I think it would be really, really, really strange to be able to see, like, even as an atheist, to see one race of living organism become this beautiful, high level
Okay.
intellectual being
Okay.
and it not be without a purpose.
Okay, so
Without an intelligent pushing,
So-
intelligent
Sure.
pushing that.
Yeah.
Pushing that.
it's more so because there is man,
Mhm.
we understand that there must be a God according to the magisterium,
Mhm.
right? Or that because we accept the magisterium and because man is a reflection of God,
Mhm.
right? That those two things have to work together. And you're saying that evolution seems to you to be a plausible explanation to how man came to be,
Yes.
right? And seeing that man is God must be, and so God is using evolution to form man.
Mhm.
It's kind of your track.
Yeah.
So, what makes you want to read evolution or think that evolution is the best way to explain why man is over the Genesis story? And this is something that, for those of you on the podcast who don't know, we're taking an evolution class at Wyoming Catholic College. And it's a very hot topic because it brings up a lot of questions, especially for me, because it seems like we went from interpreting the Genesis in the Bible as God's word, which we ought to believe in, to now it is a mythical story that God was just using to give us hints at the truth. But he wasn't, in that moment, he wasn't saying, this is my direct word. Now we're going to take it allegorically, right? And so I guess for me, I like to put, this might be wrong, but I like to put Bible first,
Uh-huh.
read the Bible.
Mhm.
Bible says X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Give it two accounts of creation,
Mhm.
but we do get an account. And it seems very confusing to me that if we pull out the principles from the Genesis story, right now I've been reading it, but the principles behind it, do those line up with evolution? And I guess the first one for me is God created ex nihilo,
Oh yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
God created from nothing. And this is something that came up in class recently, is that even one of our teachers doesn't believe
Mhm.
that God created ex nihilo,
Wait, really?
right? Yeah.
Well, he didn't
I will
create.
leave his name left out in case this is another teacher that said this,
That's fine.
but it's just interesting to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
he didn't create man ex nihilo.
He did not.
He created him out of the dust of the earth,
Yes.
the existing creation that he made.
Yes. But it seems like for a Darwinian perspective of it,
Uh-huh.
we make God into this materialistic creature. At least for me. And it might just be me reading into Darwin as part of it.
Okay.
But even just, I can see how evolutionists could read the Bible. And many of my classmates do this in our section,
Mhm.
where it's, well, he created him out of the dust of the earth. Well,
Mhm.
dust was just an ape.
Seems like a
Okay.
stretch.
It just seems like a stretch for me, but it's just like, it depends how you read the Genesis story for me.
Mhm.
Right. And so I guess me and you have never
Okay.
talked about this before, but like
We've avoided it quite a bit.
we've avoided a lot.
Okay. Okay. I do
But-
have one question that could give us a purchase point. Okay.
All right. A purchase point?
Yes. At least for me. Okay.
This one to get me. I knew we should have stayed away from this topic.
Okay. Do you believe in a geocentric solar system.
Oh my
heliocentric
gosh.
Solar system.
We're doing this.
Wait, no. Wait, do you believe in a geocentric solar system?
Hmm.
Do you believe in a geocentric solar system?
Not a solar system, but a geocentric universe. Yeah.
Geocentric. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Wait,
Never mind.
sorry.
I was gonna. Okay.
There's you'll find out in a couple months why.
Okay.
All right.
But
I will give my non-finished WCC answer. Yes, I believe in a heliocentric universe.
Heliocentric. Okay. Like around the sun.
Wait.
Around the sun or around there?
I would like to emphasize. Wait. Heliocentric. Let me make sure I use the right
Solar
word.
system?
Solar system.
Heliocentric solar system.
Yep. I believe that we rotate around the sun.
Okay. I do too. Okay, sweet.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Okay, but this is the question I wanted to ask, and that's the answer I wanted. Is it
I
okay?
should have gone with you. We would have
Okay.
been done with this and
Okay.
could have moved on to women or something.
We can still do that. we can bail anytime. Okay.
You just
Okay.
scratch the whole
So-
first part.
So I forget the Bible verse it's in.
Yep.
It's in Exodus.
Oh,
And Moses, as long as does this have to do with his staff? There's this battle raging,
mm-hmm.
and as long as Moses
Holds his staff above
holds
his
staff
head.
above his
Yeah,
head,
that was when
then
they
the
were.
Israelites win.
That was when they were attacking. No, never mind.
Somebody.
Showing how good Catholics we are. With the
Okay,
Bible.
actually, do you have a Bible?
Of course, Tom has a Bible.
Actually, I
Go
don't
get your
have
Bible.
one, but I want to.
Nice Bible.
Very nice Bible.
do
Okay.
you guys have those? They stopped giving.
Ours are paperback. Did we get what? Our Euclid was paperback. Our Bibles. I don't even want people to see my Bible. Like, I swear my backpack is like a tornado that tears everything apart. I'll just pull out a book one day and I'm like, oh no. Like, it's just like completely like everything's bent in on itself. I'm like, how did this happen?
Wait.
It's truly shameful.
Well, paperbacks in general are so delicate.
I know. I
feel
still
like-
wish we would. I wish the college would come out with the like a Bible with like no headers of sections, and it was just like straight through of each
That-
book, you know.
Yeah.
Or I wish that we got like a scroll of the whole Bible. It would be so fun.
Yeah.
Imagine freshman year, you're just walking around with like a different scroll every day.
All that would be awesome.
Okay.
It'd be awesome.
I don't know that I can find it right now.
All right. Well, what was your
And-
overall?
and the story is vague, so actually maybe you guys can help me. There's something about the sun.
Mhm.
Something about the sun.
Okay.
Moses speaking to God, or it might have been Joshua
Mhm.
speaking to God. And it's the what is this?
Yep.
They talk about the sun rising, basically.
The
I
sun.
guess this is simple enough.
Okay.
Okay. So they're talking about the sun rising, and that's the language that God uses to talk to Joshua. The sun rising, the sun going down.
Mhm.
But we know from a heliocentric solar system that that's not the way it happens. The earth moves, the sun stays.
Yes.
So why would you take the Genesis account literal when you're not taking that verse literal?
Okay. That's a very.
Well,
Can I just respond?
Yeah,
real
go
quick?
ahead.
Okay. So in class today, in fact, we were talking about the difference from God's perspective versus human perspective,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Our understanding of chance versus our understanding
Right.
of divine providence. We call it chance
Yep.
because we as man did not understand that this event was going to happen.
Yep.
Right. To us, it seems totally random. But from God's perspective, it seems that it was ordered by his providence. He willed that to happen.
Yep.
Right. So chance from our perspective, divine providence from his.
Exactly.
Can't we just say that God was speaking from man's perspective? Because
That's what I want to say.
because that is our experience, right?
Yes,
And so it wouldn't
that's
make
it.
sense.
Yes, that's
for
why.
God.
That's why we read Genesis.
Then why?
Because God has been speaking from man's perspective from the dawn of time.
Then why wouldn't he
all the way
say
till now?
you were made as apes?
Because he's speaking from man's perspective. Man,
Dust? Why is dust? As you're saying, the Genesis account is God speaking from man's perspective.
particularly, I'm thinking of the 7-day creation. Right
Is
now,
man's perspective?
is man's perspective.
That's an interesting point.
Because here's the deal. There's a current theory among theologians now
Yeah.
that
He's much more versed in theologians than me.
they're the
I can do philosophy.
There are the 5 books of Moses that Moses wrote. But then like we get the passage that and Moses died and this happened. So Moses couldn't have written that part, right? Okay. So here's the theory. So the Israelites go into the promised land, they establish their setup or whatever, and then they sin, and then they get carried off to Babylon. Right? And they live in Babylon, and they have the prophet Ezekiel. Right. Well, the fact of the matter is that when you are an enslaved people, you tend to start taking on the traits of your captors, right?
Yeah.
And so basically, when you read Genesis, okay, look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. There is Babylonian influence throughout the Pentateuch.
We were talking about that, yeah.
So, I mean, you could say that the Babylonians got it from the Israelites, but you could also say the Israelites got it from the Babylonians. And the theory is that Ezekiel didn't want these people who are taking on this culture to fully buy into that culture. So he basically, it's sort of like what the Jesuits did in Mexico. They Christianized the Aztec culture. And in this way, he Judaized, I guess, the Babylonian culture. And so that's why we get Babylonian myth language in Genesis. So it's
that would mean that Genesis wasn't written until
that would mean parts of Genesis weren't written. That would mean that maybe the structure wasn't. But the fact of the matter is, Ezekiel was an inspired writer. So it's still the word of God.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And so God is speaking to man's perspective because this is what the people of Israel started believing, because they were separated from their temple, they were separated from their culture, and they were transplanted into this new one.
Wait, so let me just track. Are you saying that the 7-day creation myth comes from the Babylonian understanding? Are you saying that other parts of Genesis reflect a Babylonian mythology and myth use? And so
Parts of it.
Yeah. Are you saying that the 7-day creation is specifically, or just parts of Genesis?
I'd have to look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, but to my understanding, it was part of the 7-day thing.
Okay. So we're saying 7-day comes from
definitely the Great Flood, definitely the garden.
So you're saying the Great Flood is just myth?
No, no, not entirely.
Okay.
Because there is evidence of
a
flooding in that time period in that area. So
so you think that it was just in that area, not a worldwide flood?
Well, here's the thing.
I'm outing myself as a
God is just
right now.
I know. Okay. Well, I mean, like, why would God flood the entire world if only the sinners are living in a very small part of the world? You know.
Well, didn't he say though it would cover the highest mountain?
It's just him speaking allegorically, Tom.
Or
don't bring literal in this.
Hang on,
conversation.
Speaking from man's perspective, because why would I think Mount Everest is the highest mountain if I've never seen it? I would think.
Well,
I feel like we've gotten a tad sidetracked. I hate to be the
fair.
person that
I think it's legit. I think it's legit.
I think there's a lot of good points in there.
Okay.
Points that I don't know if we're capable of making.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Back to just evolution.
Okay. Anyway.
Maybe this is a good question for you guys. Gotten to the point where they talk about the gene that mutated in the ape?
No. We just had our first ape class today, which we didn't even talk about the reading. We spent the first hour and 5 minutes arguing about the difference between philosophy and science, and then also the difference between divine providence and chance.
Oh, okay.
So,
Alright.
but I know what you're referring to
I mean,
with the gene
uh,
mutation.
Yeah, because so when my brother Ben, when he was in college, um, they said that God intervened and changed the gene in the ape and made man.
Mm-hmm.
My class, they said that God didn't do anything and it was all part of a plan.
Okay.
So
That's the difference between divine. Or what's his praise? I'm forgetting now.
uh,
divine intervention?
Divine intelligence
providence.
or divine intelligence versus, or like intelligent creation,
intelligent design.
intelligent design. That was it, and the God card.
Oh, yeah.
I think, or no, wait, maybe one is purely Darwinian and one is intelligent design. I think
Mhm.
that's what it is, right? God intervening at certain parts
Uh-huh.
at like through creation, saying, "Boom, now life here, now life here, now life there." That's divine intelligence, right? The different like ages of development. It's like every time that there's a new thing that comes about, that's God
Oh yeah,
intervening.
yeah.
Whereas
Oh,
Darwinian is basically saying the earth was like this floating swamp pad of things. And then after, 3 billion years, boom, a light switch flipped. Boom, now we have multicellular
mm,
like life. And now, boom, evolution has started,
See, okay,
which is a fascinating. So those are two
Okay.
different ones.
here's something.
Wait, what was your question
Oh
well,
yeah.
my
Oh,
question was
with the ape gene?
with ape gene was like, were they saying in class now that God directly was involved with his creation of man or he wasn't?
So fascinating. I have not a direct answer to that, but our professor says that. So me and him got into a hot debate, not this class, but last class, because I'm more on the creationist side. He's hardcore on the evolution side.
Mm,
And he asked me whether I find Darwinian evolution more plausible, or he is proposing this new form of evolution that I've never heard. But it's basically that within the
Lamarckian? Is that the name for it?
I think so, but it's like
Right.
within the cells themselves, they are ordered to mutate. Like they, in a way, have their own nature, right? And so the way that he described it is like there is a cell and it has a shotgun pointed and it shoots, right? And like it's slow, it's ordering itself to become that thing. And it was designed originally to eventually evolve into a horse, right? And that's contained within the cell itself. So it's like the cells are ordered towards certain particular types of mutation. So
Oh,
those are two options to answer your question. It'd just be like God created
uh-huh.
everything, or like created what was there,
Yeah.
right? But created everything with a purpose from the very moment, like, but not just things, but like even cells in a way have a nature which they were meant to become. And
Mm,
so it's just like within themselves. It's got really confusing.
that is
Me and him
confusing.
disagreed really quickly, and I haven't read enough about it to talk about it
Sure.
actually, but
Okay. Here's a thought
Oh.
or a question. Okay. It
yeah, definitely Brooks Fontenot.
Yeah, we got you.
the okay. Do you think God wants to be worshipped in virtue or through nature or through miracles?
Oh,
Because here's the thing. We do have a miracle
I know.
every single day.
Mhm,
The holy sacrifice of the mass.
yes.
We do have a miracle.
Yes.
And then there are other miracles like Fatima,
Mhm,
Eucharistic miracles on top of that.
mhm. But you're asking,
Guadalupe.
does he want our basis of belief to be miracles or to be
Yes.
self-evident or things which we can come to know on our own?
Yes, and that's the question because I know I feel
I
like
think that's an interesting question.
That is,
God
yeah.
intervening into nature to like directly create man, that would be a miracle. Like
But it's
that's
something that we actually hold, right? Like even you're like the church itself. That's the
Uh-huh.
one thing it like certain on. God put
Yeah.
the soul in
no
man,
in
right? And so it has
is
to be a
miracle.
divine intervention at some point in the evolutionary. Even if we're going to hold evolution, at some point, God had to say, "Let there be man,"
Yes.
right? And there was man.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if asking the question if God wants to be worshipped by miracle or or by nature really brings any light to the conversation,
Okay.
especially because
It still might because because every in
I
that
guess
way every human being is a miracle. The fact that a spiritual reality is like intrinsically connected to like matter, that is a miracle in and of itself. But we don't experience that as that every day. It's normal for us. It's like atheists can still deny the spiritual realm because it's not so obvious to them. So it's a miracle, but it's a miracle that doesn't, I guess, force
well,
belief.
I don't even know. Okay, because I am in a way being convinced
Uh-huh.
less that it's a miracle. I don't know. Weird enough, because it seems like the matter of a certain thing is disposed to a form, right? And this is a conversation that I think another one of our professors had with us when he was subbing in for our actual professor. But it's like Dr. Person. I don't know if we're supposed to say their names or not.
I don't know. Probably better not to.
Probably better not. Dr. Cigar. I think was saying that, and so I think other faculty hold this as well. Don't quote me. I'm gonna get in so much trouble.
You're good.
If in a lab, right? Not even in a person, like in a woman's, or like when man and female come together and there's the act of the conjugal act and boom, life, right? In the womb. That's what we as Catholics would hold. They would say in a lab, we took an egg and a sperm and put the two together, boom, we're disposed, there's life there, right? So it just seems like the matter necessitates the form. In that case, the fact that those two things came together,
Uh-huh.
from that we have to say that there's a man
Mhm.
or the
I
potential
see
for a
where you're
man.
going. I see where you're going.
Yeah,
Keep talking.
I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
But you know where I'm going, so pick it up.
So basically you're saying is the matter dictates the form.
Yeah.
So the matter of an ape could not dictate the matter of a man. Was that what you're gonna say?
I don't think that's particularly what I was gonna say, but that works for me too.
Okay.
I don't know where I was going. I had a thought.
Okay. Well, okay.
Drink more whiskey.
I think I need to do some research on this.
I know. I feel
I-
like we're radically out of our league here.
It might.
It is fun.
I do not know whether it's a dogma of the church that God intervenes directly with husband and wife to create the soul.
Yeah, that's what we were
Not-
talking about.
Okay. So maybe that proves your point, but also proves my point. Because
Right, the fact that matter, if we can get the matter suitable naturally,
Yeah.
then it's time for God to say, "Let there be man."
Yeah.
It's
And
kinda like-
and the soul is connected to the intellect. So if God like directly intervenes
Gives
in
it-
this like ape fetus,
Yeah.
gives him an intellectual being, then Adam could be born from a monkey.
Oh, I have so many problems.
I know.
The question is,
But
then the question is, is Adam the father of all men, or is the monkey the father of all men?
See,
no,
that-
the father
I
no,
don't know.
because because Adam does not share the same nature as the ape.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the ape couldn't even be called the father of Adam.
See,
But
this-
Adam becomes the father of all men.
Okay, here's one fascinating thing I'm beginning to realize. We use the language of nature. I think nature is a made up concept by man. Let me just get real radical.
Hobbesian.
Yeah, okay, but we use it, right? Like, even in this case, the fact that, Adam came from the ape, but we wouldn't say that Adam has the same nature as the ape because Adam now has the soul of man,
Yep.
right?
Keep talking.
Hey, Mr. Firefighter. But if we say that, it just seems to present so many problems in the fact that a lesser being is giving life to
Higher
a
being.
higher being.
God is the life giver.
I know God is the life giver, but we also like evolutionists. We
Uh-huh.
like if we're gonna hold that, we have to hold to secondary causes, right? And so we're not gonna say that God is going to break the first principles, right? Those first principles that we all agree on
Mhm.
when we start doing the philosophy thing, right? A thing cannot give that a thing cannot give greater than what it has,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Boom. Aristotle, even in his physics, says a like can only produce like, right?
Mhm.
That for that in itself, just like these like philosophical principles that we can begin with and that
Uh-huh.
we all agree on at a certain stage seems to be undone. There's a little book by Father Riffinger,
Uh-huh.
great guy, great priest, who it's like the metaphysics of evolution, right? Basically, what he does is he just takes the seven metaphysical principles,
Mhm.
lays them down, and goes, "Here is why evolution can't work from philosophical principles."
Mhm.
Right? And basically, the only way that you can wiggle your way out of it is just by saying, God, right? And it just seems like you as an evolutionist who wants to
Mhm.
give answers in the most materialistic way, right? Besides God saying, "Let there be man," right? If we want to argue that
Uh-huh.
evolution naturally occurs and matter is disposed to these things, we don't. At the same time, you don't want to get lost in that and then deny your philosophical principles that we begin with,
Uh-huh.
right? You see how like those two things wouldn't flow at the same time, right? If I hold these principles, I can't then just say, but I really want this to be true, right? According to the evidence of science. And so I'm going to drop my philosophical principles because science has shown me that this must be the case, right? Because of the evidence. And it just like
Okay.
this is what we were talking about
Yeah,
in
yeah.
class today, right? It's like what role should philosophy play in science and what role should science play in philosophy? Should those two things be separate? Well, of course they can't be separate, right? Philosophy gives us the principles,
Mhm.
like the first principles that we're going to try to argue from,
Mhm.
right? Whereas science is going to say, well, I have this hypothesis. Where that hypothesis come from thinking, from philosophizing. And I'm going to begin with that hypothesis, and now I'm going to do experiments, right, to try and prove that thing,
Mhm.
right? But at a certain point, if I don't have the proof for that thing, right, or my proof of that thing directly conflicts with my starting principles of philosophy,
Uh-huh.
it seems like we have a problem. Like it's fine if the like if I don't philosophically understand the evidence that science is giving me or their methods behind it or whatever. But if the conclusion that science reaches contradicts the beginning principles of philosophy itself, I have a hard time just like making that jump.
Okay, I don't see that I'm violating any philosophical principles because okay, if the soul is the form of the body,
Yeah.
the soul dictates what the matter of the body does, can do, can't do, right?
Mm.
Um, but if God and this isn't above God's ability because he does this at every conception, bestowing the immortal soul in the fetus.
Hmm.
And if he chooses to bestow a human soul into the fetus, then that's going to dictate what the body does.
Yeah,
Because
but
we're made in the image and likeness of God. So it's
why would he
God
break the
giving.
laws of nature though?
He's not breaking the laws of nature.
Right? A
He's
thing
doing
can
the
only
same
give a
thing.
thing can only give like produces like.
And we're in God's image, not in our Father's image. In a way, it's in our Father's image.
So you're just saying the
We're not.
monkey isn't even really the father.
No, no, by far, he is not the Father.
It was just this material thing in order to make man like to make a being which could hold man so that he could come to a gestation period and be pushed out.
Yeah,
It was just a convenience thing.
yeah. I am saying
At that point, why can't I just say
yeah,
God created man from the dust of the earth?
he
Right?
did.
Well, yeah.
But not through a monkey. Like, why can't I say that? It seems more plausible to me, right? If I'm just saying that a monkey was came about to be so that God could say, let there be man in the belly of the stomach, or the belly of a monkey.
Mhm.
It just doesn't seem like, now it just seems like I don't even know what we're arguing about, right? Because I guess it's just what this evidence that science could be showing us versus what seems more plausible because God's word said it to me, right? Because as much as we would like there to be, and as much as our professors would like there to be, it doesn't seem that there's proof about evolution, undeniable proof about it, or else we wouldn't be
I
arguing
don't
about
think
it.
it's the other way either.
I know, but
Otherwise, we wouldn't be arguing about it.
I know,
Okay.
which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
But like, I
Okay.
guess what's interesting to me,
Mhm.
and this might be a fault of my own, because it's just, if I'm going to make a choice,
Mhm.
I'm going to rather fall back on God's word,
Mhm.
right? And apparently, like, this is new to me. That's wrong. It's kind of what I've been being told now, is that we
It's not
don't
that
want
it's wrong.
we don't want to use the God card when we don't have to. We want to explain it materialistically. But I'm like, what is the benefit? Right? Because there seems to be the opposite than people coming to, like, to love God through this evolutionary theory, than for people to have, for like generations that believe
Mhm.
God created man. Right? We're seeing a radical shift just in religion itself. And like, remember what the reading said today
Mhm.
about, I forgot it was Dawkins, but he could just say,
Yeah.
now we can be like, atheism has been proven right, or something like that. I can't remember exactly
Yeah.
what it was, but just like, that seems to be the mindset coming out of evolution. Cause it's like, we have found a way, like, and this goes back to like what you were saying, right, and what you were taught, right? We have found a way to give an explanation for why man is without God.
Mhm.
And that is like, seems to be part of the mindset. Hate to shift topics, but no, actually, I'm grateful. Like, that we got in theology, right? With the culture of death, right?
Uh-huh.
As soon as we as man can control life, and we can say God's not involved in life, right? We develop naturally. We're nothing more than animals.
Well,
What does it like? What does it matter?
okay, would it be better to uh do s- uh do science? Would it be better to do science to learn more about God, or because some people can misinterpret science or confuse the rules of science? Would it be
What do you
better
mean?
to never do science and never come to even better knowledge of God because some people choose
Yeah.
to follow their own faults?
You mean understand God as in understand the world which He has created for us?
Yeah, because I feel like the more you learn about the natural world, the more you see the order of God, the more you fall in love with God.
Mhm.
And that is why, like, when I worked for the Bureau of Land Management last summer, I've worked with a I worked with a lot of like flaming liberals who let's just say really disliked me simply because I was a straight white guy who wasn't liberal, right?
I mean, that seems like fair enough to me.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Good enough to hate,
Sad
right?
reality.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The
You're about to
kind
get marked on YouTube.
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, but the kind of the kind of wonder they had for the God that created the world, like, Wyoming Catholic, this is what we're taught: wonder at God's creation, this, that, and the other thing. We're told this. The fathers of the church tell us this.
Yeah.
But these people are starting without those first principles, without that instruction, and they're coming to it on their own.
Mhm.
And they come to this simple, childlike, God must love us. And there's lots of them like that.
That God loves them, or that the world is cool?
That there is an intelligent design that created
Hmm.
creation like this. But here's the thing, because they don't have divine revelation, they have to stop there.
Mhm.
And that's where the reasoning gets faulty. But there's something about studying the world that makes you know God better.
Yes.
It,
100%.
and that's why I feel that, or not feel, believe, think That's my
Can't get there.
my logical thought pushes me to say we need to learn as much as we can, not to harness the world to serve us,
Mhm.
but simply to know God more and to love God more and to like use that, like that's the whole idea of medicine, is to love neighbor, loving God.
Mhm.
That stuff is good, but it's taken out of context so many times.
Yeah.
But I think we should still do medicine. We should still learn anatomy. We should still learn all these things because we with harnessed with Christian charity,
Yeah.
like we could do unspeakable things. And the problem is there's so many people who don't believe that. That's
Mhm.
where the problem
Yeah.
is. But we have been given this task to be fruitful, multiply,
Yeah.
subdue the world.
Who-
That's a human thing to do. So we
And-
must fulfill our nature in that way.
And even a stronger argument for I think what you're saying is the fact that we're intellectual beings
Mhm,
and we're meant to come to know the truth.
mhm,
That's just part of what science and what philosophy is,
mhm,
right? Is trying to discern the truth from the world around us,
mhm,
right? Whether that be from the abstractions in my mind of ideas through philosophy,
mhm.
or it be through trying to do natural philosophy or just about the world around us. I see these things. What does that mean? I should think about these things. How do I find an order in it? And then science just being like, well, we've seen these things. How do we prove what we know is true? Right? It
Mhm.
seems to be the main goal of science. And most people don't find a distinguishment between natural philosophy and science anymore. But I wanted to keep it for the liberal arts students, like the three of them that'll get watch this. But yeah,
I think the problem I had with evolution in class was like there were so many inconsistencies that we never talked about.
Yeah.
And they kind of just steamrolled them over to make the
Yeah.
evolution theory seem true. And
Yeah,
then
that's definitely true.
they're also like, well, because monkeys and people look so similar and their genes are so close, they gotta be from monkeys.
Well, here's the
It's
thing.
like, well, we also have
That's-
eyes that are
yeah.
very similar to fish.
No. I got an argument for why we developed from fish.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, man. Well, not me. I was given an argument. And how you know?
Heard this one yet.
It's really complex. It was basically Professor, what should I call this one?
I don't know which one.
Our science teacher.
Oh, the one right now?
Yeah. Should I call him Doctor?
I don't know. I don't know him that well.
Doctor. Doctor. But it was basically like going through like how an eye could eventually develop. And it was just a drawing on the board. And it was just like, it's like this little lump on the back of this thing's skin or whatever it was that was sensitive to the sun. And then it was like from that, we got to the eye. And it was like a 10-minute thing on the board. And so it's just interesting to see, like, but it all comes from the fact that things are naturally developing to meet the circumstances of their environment.
Which, like, that's
Which is true.
engineer design. Like,
But that's also not
it-
evolution, that's mutation.
But in order
Right,
for
yeah.
us to be like we are, the conditions had to be right for a very long time, or at least in stages. And that's intelligent design. That's like you can't come up with a human being by sheer chance out of just matter.
Well, that's
You
that's
know?
the thing, though. That's like the evolution. They're like, if the right parameters are set in place, humanity comes about. I think that's what they're trying to prove. And they're like, because that can happen, and God put the right parameters in place, it proves that God exists.
It's one of those things where it's
It's
like
like-
the evidence backs up both sides,
Mhm.
you know?
Exactly.
And that I think that's where faith comes in, because you can have the truth told at you all day long,
Yeah.
but if you want to believe something,
You have to do the work.
you're gonna believe what your principles, what you've grew up with. You're
Yeah.
gonna believe that always prior to anything else, simply because. But here's the thing with faith is that it's a gift. It's a very good gift,
Mhm.
and it's given for those who ask.
Mhm.
So if you don't ask, you're not going to be given it. And that's why so many atheists can use the evidence that I'm trying to give for the existence of God. They can use that and say that proves that does not prove the existence of God, because they're not actually looking. They're not
They're not looking at
looking
it from this mindset or the scope.
yeah, and they're not asking for the gift.
That just seems problematic.
Well, that
To me-
also sounds, what's the word? The Saint Augustine fought that heresy, Pelagianism.
Oh, Manichaeanism? Well, we thought Platonism or
Or
Monism and
Pelagius,
Manichaeism.
the one that said that man can come to God on his own terms, like, or not his own
I think
terms,
it's
but
Platon.
his own initiation.
Yeah, I think that's Platonism.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Maybe.
almost sounds like that. It's like if we don't ask, we don't get it. It's like, well, God's always giving it to us,
Yeah.
and then it's like if
Okay.
we accept it, and then we can ask for
Okay.
more.
See, like,
What
I don't know if that was what you're going for.
that's not exactly what I was going for.
Oh,
Okay, I was
sorry.
thinking more of like in line with Pascal's wager. Why
I
does
love me some Pascal's wager.
why does Pascal's wager work? Is because
It's a great question. Does it work? Is it?
Mm.
it worked. It worked for me.
It works for me too, so I can't really argue against.
Here's the thing: the truth is a person. The truth is Christ.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's no way you're gonna come to belief unless you start talking to him. And that's why Pascal's wager worked, because even if you don't believe he exists, you
Mhm.
start talking to him, and then all of a sudden your life just starts.
That's beyond Pascal's wager, though.
It's
Right.
based in it.
It's based in it, but
based in it.
it
But-
goes beyond
But
Yeah.
but
it into more of a Catholic perspective
okay.
of it.
But okay. But notwithstanding,
Thomas gets upset at me when we talk.
if you're you're gonna start believing in God.
Okay, but I feel like we can even make a more radical claim
Uh-huh.
that if you start learning, right, you can begin to believe in a God. Right? Like I'm thinking of the first chapters of the compendium, right? Where it is not even through divine revelation that Aquinas is making these arguments, right? It's purely philosophical,
Uh-huh.
right? The five proofs for the existence of God,
Uh-huh.
and not a mention of divine revelation, right? And
Uh-huh.
so it seems like if I truly start wanting to know the truth around the world, right? If I just begin seeking truth,
Uh-huh.
right? Not even a relationship with a God, right? But truth, which is ultimately a relationship with God, as you were kind of saying, right? Truth is a person.
Mhm.
But even if I don't know that, right? It's got to lead me at some point, if I'm honestly discerning the truth, to a God,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that if I just think, well, I remember making this argument when I was in like third grade. I remember sitting at a desk and be like, oh, I could take on any scientist that said that there's no God. It's easy. It's just like, where did that come from? Where did that come from?
Uh-huh.
Where did that come from? Oh, yeah. Where did that come from? Right. Like that idea of like, I'll go all day. Like, who made that? Who made that? Right. It's like this idea that's in us of this infinite regress isn't possible. Right. And if we begin like seeing causes around the world, eventually you have to get to something that is a first cause, that is a first mover.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it's water if you're Thales, right? Maybe it's gravity if you're JD. But anyway, it's just like you got to come to some understanding of some force.
Yeah.
And so it just seems
Okay.
like,
You know, it's super interesting. Like, I think the most interesting thing we've talked about this semester is and the reason why I think this is interesting is because I experienced it on my own. I've taken two different emergency first responder courses. And in both textbooks, they're talking about how the human body works, and they're talking about the organs dictating, like telling this organ to do this, telling this organ to do this. And it's like this like self-replacing system,
so
self-enclosed, and
genetics is,
it's almost like intelligent design, except for I'm not
you're not even doing it.
it, but it's like this, like even on the cellular level, like the body talks to each other, right?
No, but it
And,
makes-
and this is what we talked about when we started talking about like cells, is as doctor was saying that no matter
doctor,
yeah. He's like, no matter where you are as a biologist, no matter whether you're Darwinian, no matter whether you're a creationist,
Mhm.
you use the same terminology. And because the only way you can explain how the human body works is by like showing that like there's a design in it.
Yeah.
You know, there's this system. Like the
Where
fact
did
like
this system come from? Like,
I
I have
I
such a hard
but
time
it's so
believing
crazy.
that something that complex, right, could evolve from a single cell organism. I have
wish they
such
Full circle.
a hard time, right?
I was trying to like ease
No,
out
no,
of
no,
it,
no.
but okay, let's
I'm
go back.
I am fine to get out of that, but I just wanted to be like, because it's such a complex system and such a beautiful system, it's so hard for me to just leave it up to chance. But let's just like,
That's the thing.
Here's the
It's
thing.
like
It took this
you should have let us go out.
it took this random shepherd to pick up this rock of iron ore and say, hey, I could put this under fire. Hey, I could beat this into a plowshare. And it took how long for them to start building like metal stuff to eventually get to the complex thing of a car?
But it only
Well,
took
yeah.
monkeys like, a few years to make a raft and float to Africa.
Well, yeah,
from
that-
Africa to South
Well,
America.
they didn't make it, more like a storms. Anyway.
Okay, in our reading today, they were making all kinds
Yeah,
of, they were
they were-
making axes.
Okay.
They had burial rites. Like, man, those are some smart monkeys. And every time, like we're not gonna talk about the intelligence today. And
Okay.
like the whole time we were like, so axes, burial rites. And he's just like, oh, I said the name. Oop, leap it.
Actually, okay, but here's the thing, like that's like evidence for intelligence, you're saying, but that was like 2 or 3 generations of Homo sapiens, like back
No.
from us. So
Not
there's
Homo
development.
sapiens. Not Homo sapiens.
No,
It
no.
was-
See,
it
that's
was
the thing. They were different. They were
Yes.
different.
Different.
That's an example of evolution. If they had an intelligence and we developed into this, then
Oh, so you don't think that God was necessary for the intelligence of man?
no, it
For
wasn't.
the intellect?
No, I'm not.
Okay, then
saying
why do
that.
those
I'm
things prior
showing
to
that-
why do those things prior to man have intelligence in some way? Right? And they don't even have any
No,
proof
I'm
of these
showing.
things.
No, I'm showing that to show you
To show me.
how ridiculous that situation is. Because here's the thing.
Talk to me, Goose.
I think I'm lost, honestly.
I too am lost. This episode is still sponsored by Bullet.
Shoot me now.
This podcast is not released. We'll come back another night. We'll have a better conversation. Oh my gosh.
Well, I was gonna ask you, Greg, about your thesis iteration idea.
Oh, let's just get me in more trouble. Here we go.
Some
Hot
cheese.
take of the day. After I just defended philosophy, philosophy is evil and is the corruption of all men and cities.
Let's go.
If you want to go,
You see my title?
no, I didn't. What was it?
Philosophy, the destruction or the salvation of cities, or how I learned to stop worrying and love philosophy.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. Shift there. You might not have been
I was
expecting
not
that
expecting
one.
that, yeah.
No, I went a very different route than I wanted to.
Really?
Yeah, so this is my conclusion of my oration.
Okay.
I'll get into my oration after I do my conclusion. That seems proper.
Does.
But at the end of my oration, I basically told the story of me and Dr. Papadopoulos practicing my oration because he asked me after I gave him my first practice, he's like, Briggs, did you change your mind? He's like, did you prove what you set out to prove? Did you prove that philosophy is evil? I had to sit there and finally admit to myself and to him, no, I didn't.
Oh,
I proved the opposite.
really? Really?
And so my oration conclusion was basically philosophy is not an evil, like ultimately, like not a thing of pure evil substance given to man by the devil, but it was a tool like anything else that man could himself corrupt and use for evil. I know, kind of a cop-out answer, but it's the
And-
true answer, unfortunately.
I
So
mean, That seems like a good answer. Like, I mean, I know it's like when you do something like a narration, like you want to prove, like, okay, I think this is the way it is, and then you kind of like turn around and say, okay, it does match up with more reality.
I know. I wanted to prove it so badly too. I had all the evidence. I thought I had all the evidence. And I was just like, I read about the Romans, I've read about the Greeks. Anytime philosophy is introduced into a city, those civilizations are corrupted. Their men are turned effeminate, and eventually they are led to their own destruction by the weakness that philosophy caused. I was like, boom, I have my evidence. I can prove this. No,
Wow.
I can't, right? Because it all goes back to what is philosophy,
Yeah.
right? And philosophy, the basic definition is love of wisdom.
Oh,
Well, what is wisdom? Aristotle in the Metaphysics begins to give us an answer when it's basically, oh shoot, should have brushed up on my oration or thesis, but it's basically the understanding of universals, right? And Leo Strauss, in his essay, What is Political Philosophy, gives a definition. Basically, philosophy is the quest for universal knowledge. So you can like put those two things together. And basically, Aristotle in his that definition that I didn't really give basically gives like a hierarchy, and that this man is wise, but this man is wiser, right? And he basically gives like this hierarchy of wisdom until it's just understanding the cause, right? Is like the ultimate form of wisdom for him. And so you can see like that idea with Leo Strauss gives that idea a term, calling it a quest, right? It's like saying that man goes from this one thing to this like starting place to this ultimate end of knowing the good itself.
mm,
I can't say that seeking to know the good, the true is evil. Like you just can't say that.
yeah.
And so if you just give like a definition to philosophy, and if someone is actually doing the philosophy thing, you can't call it evil.
Yeah.
And how foolish I was to try. But I'm really glad I went on that journey because I, for the longest time, Thomas can probably attest, hated philosophy.
Really?
Hated it. I thought it was like the thing that lifted us all into the clouds, removed us from the world, and it was just causing us like that image that you get of Socrates in the clouds, right? Of these philosophers like dangling from the heavens, like where they're like asses to the sky. It's like I'm inspecting the tree, right? It's like these silly images of philosophers that we all have in our minds, like, oh, these are the people that just sit around all day and smoke cigars and drink whiskey.
Oh,
But
hey.
like that idea is just such a it's an
Off-putting idea.
it's an off-putting idea for us, right? And it makes us, or it made me want to prove that that's wrong. And like that was, I found my evidence in Rome, in Greece. But it's just if I define my terms, I have to say they weren't doing the philosophy thing well, right? Is ultimately what it comes down to. And so it really just turned into from a desire to come to know the good, right? In which good, knowing the good, even of like, oh, good of the state, right? Can't deny that if we're seeking the good, right? There's different levels of good, but if a true philosopher, right, he's going to want to know all of them and aspire to do all the good things. It's like the truly virtuous man from Aristotle,
Yeah.
right? And what I used in my thesis was Plato's Republic, where he gives the idea of the philosopher king, right? It's like this is a radical idea. Philosophy and politics, those two don't go together.
Right.
But that's what a true philosopher, right? And even Plato himself admits like, this is the best thing, but it's not plausible because no philosopher would want to be a king, and no king is really capable of being a philosopher. And so it's just these are two things that ought it's like the two intersecting or the two parallel lines of Brothers K, right? They're the two things that need to meet, but just can't meet in reality. And so uniting politics with philosophy doesn't go well in our experience,
Yeah.
but we understand that it's what ought to happen. Or it doesn't go well, let me say, until Cicero, because Cicero is my boy. I love Cicero so much now after reading him for my thesis. But I don't know.
That's good. Do you think there's a pattern like what made like the fall of Rome and the fall of Greece and all the others? Like, was there a definite pattern you saw, like how philosophy went bad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that it was when philosophy itself became the end of man.
Oh.
Right. So this is something I pointed to using Cicero.
Huh.
Cicero, one of his dialogues is De Republica, where basically he sets up this conversation between, I think it's four men. And basically the introduction of it is, oh, have you heard about the apparition of the two suns? Right? It's like, why are we talking about two suns when we almost have two nations and two governments? Right? And so it's putting up the philosophical, right? We wanted to discuss about the apparition of the two suns versus the political, right? And this is a thing that is set up at the beginning, and we don't even sort of get an answer till at the end of, can't remember what book it is, but it's the Dream of Scipio. I think it's book 2, where
Oh yeah.
did you read the Dream of Scipio in school? Okay, we didn't read it. So I like this was like revelation for me when I was reading for my thesis.
Oh.
And my advisor gave me this book and was like, you need to read this. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's
I've
so
heard,
good.
I like Cicero. I loved his writing earlier. So I picked it up and like reading the Dream of Scipio. Basically, what happens is the main person, Scipio, goes up to heaven, called by his ancestor, Scipio Africanus. And Africanus and them are up there. And what are they doing in the heavens but philosophizing? Right. And Scipio is like, oh, with my ancestors, my father, y'all are doing the philosophy thing. I want to stay here with y'all. And Africanus turns to him and goes, no, right? You are put on earth for a mission or for a duty. And if you neglect that duty, then you are deserting the post which God has put you at.
Oh.
Right. So it's this understanding that, yes, philosophy is the highest good, according to Cicero,
Uh-huh.
but it's a good which, while on earth, must serve one's country. Right. So, and if you divorce the country from the philosophy, or philosophy from the country, right? And I'm only going to do the philosophizing thing because it is the highest thing that man is made for. You're neglecting the fact that you're on earth and you're not supposed to just do the heavenly thing, right? You're supposed to do the earthly thing of acting with other men, like being in a country, right? That's something that we were meant to do. And so when the people of Rome started putting forth, like there's in the life of Cato, the elder, I believe it is, he talks about when a Roman or when a Greek philosopher came to Rome. And he talks about the youths running mad over philosophy. Right. So even he himself like pointed to this, like this is affecting our culture. Right. And so when civilizations started to put philosophy before their own culture, right, or before the good of their community, that's when you begin to see like this downfall of these civilizations that were so great once and yet no longer are. Or at least that was like one track. Like there's obviously, and there's Montesquieu. Um, I can't remember the title of his book, but he points to also like the greatness of Rome or the greatness of Greece, the fact that they became so rich and powerful, like it just corrupted the people themselves. But it's like Rome was big before philosophy entered the city, and you can track it all with the life of Cicero or the life of Cato. And it just seems like there's this shift in the people, right? Once, like, and even afterwards in the life of Cicero, right? The question is no longer, how am I a good Roman, right? Like, or like, what is the Roman good, right? It's what is my good, right? There's this idea that it's no longer me being unified with the state, but it's me and if I want to, the state. And so that like as soon as you divorce yourself from it, you just begin to see like these civilizations starting to crumble apart.
That's yeah. I think you hit it on the nail. Like just thinking about everything you're saying, like, well, yeah, like almost every civilization that implodes
Yep.
seems like it's where everyone started thinking me first. Like,
America.
oh,
This is what I originally wanted to write my thesis on, but my advisor told me no.
no.
I wanted to talk about how German philosophy in after World War II corrupted the American understanding of our ideals. But he told me it was too modern.
Too modern.
Yeah.
Such a good question, though.
And it's a question I want to pursue, but it's something that it's hard to, especially in a 40-page paper, especially when he didn't want, he made me cut it down to, I got it down to 33. I had 46, but eventually I got it down. But just like I know I could not have fit like a modern because you can't say something definitive unless you back it up.
Right.
Like every sentence has to be like this because this because this, right? I mean, it just has to be like this massive train of so I can say this, which I even still had in my thesis, but like I couldn't even imagine doing it for a modern. But it's just like I think it's something like looking at it in the ancient, like the ancient always informs the present,
It does.
right? So in understanding how philosophy, excuse me, corrupted Rome or corrupted Greece, right? Now I can look at the modern world and be like, how have we started to do the same thing that they did, right? Especially with America.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're really onto it though. Like, I mean, I've been thinking about it too, like how it's interesting you mentioned how the youths were going all into philosophy. And
Video games.
yeah, video games, but like a lot of people now are just into like stupid stuff even worse than video games. You know, it's like at least in a video game, you're trying to be an active player.
Yeah, gotta go eat my Tide Pods, man.
Yeah. It's like now kids are literally like becoming drones, you know? It's like
Oh,
it's really bad. Like they'll just whatever the programming is of scrolling, it puts them into like it's almost like a hypnosis thing. And then they like that's actually that's interesting. I wonder if it is hypnosis.
I don't know about that.
Maybe it might not be, but
I guess
just
it's
like
the effects of technology.
but just like you know that constant always
Cool.
searching for new info to
Mhm.
like always kind of keep themselves plugged in because they
Yep.
don't want to feel left out.
No,
Yep.
that's like one of the biggest effects I see with technology
Yeah.
is what it does on the psyche of a person and the fact that they can't feel comfortable unless they're being affirmed by their social media friends, right? So it's like you can't even be who you are,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, if I'm gonna take a picture, I've got to make it look aesthetically pleasing. I've got to put on my, if I'm a girl, I'm gonna put on my makeup, like whatever, right? Like every picture has to be like the perfect painting of the perfect life, right? There's no more of this experience of the real.
We're living in platonic forms all the time.
You just, we're bringing Plato up in here.
Oh,
Those are some pretty shitty looking platonic forms.
No, it's true. They think it is though.
You know,
If they think that they are their own platonic form, then they're stuck there. You know, they're no longer reaching for something a higher ideal than what they already have. Even though like it's constantly they're not happy in who they are.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is they're trying to like engineer this paradise heaven, right?
Yeah.
Engineering parameters.
Never mind. Yeah. I don't know. Like,
Did you have like a solution or like how you keep philosophy and like the city together?
I did, in fact.
Yeah?
Philosophy and the city together.
Uh-huh.
I only heard the part about philosophy. I think it all comes from an understanding of duty.
Oh,
Yes.
this,
You know, the Ciceronian in me just gotta love duty.
yeah.
But I'm gonna give this as a Catholic answer because that's what I wrote, but you could easily just take it out and make it
Uh-huh.
secular. But if we have this understanding of duty, and Aquinas talks about this in Summa Secundae, I think question 98. Secunda, question 98. But he lays out the 3 different levels of piety, right? Verse 1 is piety to God. Figured. Second is piety to family, and last is piety to state. Right? He says that if you're failing at any one of these 3 forms of piety, you're failing at the greatest one of all, piety to God. Right? Any of the other 2, you're failing to God.
Oh.
Right? And so if we as man neglect if we put our desire to know and just like, oh, I'm a thinking thing. We get all Descartesian, right? I'm a thinking thing, and that's all I do. And so I'm just going to think because this is the way that I'm fulfilled. And the material things around me don't matter. If I do that, right, I'm failing at that piety that I ought to have to my state, and that is owed to my state, even Aquinas says, because in the same way that your parents gave you birth, your state gave you a country, right? Gave you protection, right? We owe things to those people and to that state, which does those things for us, right? So, in just like the unification of philosophy in the city ultimately comes down to the fact that on this earth, philosophy cannot be devoid of serving the state, right? Of serving you as a person. Right? If I just think I'm doing the philosophizing thing because it is the highest thing for me, and I push that away from any other understand or any other thing in my life, I'm doing it wrong. I cannot philosophize for the sake of philosophizing while I am here on earth. If I'm going to philosophize, I'm going to come to know truth in a better way, but that truth cannot just stay in my mind, or I cannot just keep seeking to know more truth. I should keep seeking to know more truth, but not that purely. Instead, that truth which I came to know necessitates a duty to my family and to my friends and to my country, right? If I know things, I got to share the fact that I know those things, right? And that's going to inform the way I live, right? And it's going to inform that I should serve my country, right? All these things, right? If we purely go into the abstract platonic form world and we live there, you're forgetting the part that, yeah, I have a mind, I also have a body.
Yeah.
Right? Like we are this twofold creature, and we can't only serve the one, even though it might be the highest good for man to serve his intellect. Like that's what makes us the highest animal is the fact that we have an intellect. But I'm an animal, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a social animal at that. And so by neglecting the social part of that, I'm making myself into more of a savage than taking those things which I come to know.
Or a god.
Yeah.
Or a god.
Or a god if we want to go all Descartesian, right? I'm either going to make myself into a savage or a god in my own mind and savage to others because I am neglecting the fact that I am a physical and a spiritual being, and that necessitates some action to those around me.
I really like that answer.
I'm glad.
I mean,
I'm glad someone liked
No.
it. My panel at my oration did not like what?
they didn't like it.
No. It's okay though. I said some dumb things.
I feel like that's such a good answer though, because like just thinking about our conversation so far, the man like the
What
man is we're supposed to be bringing both worlds together. It's like the spiritual and the material world.
Mhm.
That's like our job. It's like what God made us here to be, it's
Yep.
like the bridge between both worlds.
Mhm.
So it's like if we try to enter all spiritual world becomes like Descartesian crazy stuff like Rousseauian, or if we go materialistic, then we become like the animals.
Mhm.
So it's like we try to be God or we try to be an animal instead of just trying to be human.
And it's so hard that fine line, straddling the fence, you know.
Yeah.
I like the I like the
Yeah.
duty part of it because like
Yeah.
so Grant Cardone, I use his daily planners and he has um
Oh, we're good.
okay, actually
We got 50 more minutes of us talking.
let's go.
Oh my gosh.
Um, every page, it's like one page is like success is my duty, and then the other pages, I'm forgetting what the other page is, but it's just there every day. You know, every time you start your day, it's like success is my duty.
Yep.
And because he says it's like if you have the capacity to make good things happen in your life and for other people, that you almost have that obligation to do that because if you can do it, then there's an expectation
Yep.
that you should.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right. And that all comes from your understanding of yourself and of the world around you.
Yeah.
Right. If I understand what I am capable of offering to the world, that means that I now have a duty to offer it. I'm here to, my favorite quote of all time, finding through reading my thesis, was Cicero referred to Earth as the sphere called Earth. And I just thought it was hilarious. So I ended my thesis and my oration on that quote. But it's true, right? If we come to an understanding of these things, or I know myself better, then that means that the things that I've come to know that necessitates that I act a certain way to the world around me, to the people around me. Like it's just the way it goes. Like you're failing at your duty
Yeah.
or on a like worse, like in a moral way
Uh-huh.
by not doing it.
Right. Because we are made in the image and likeness of God, and we're asked to be in that if we're supposed to be, you know,
Yep.
fulfilling our nature.
This is my commandment that you love one another as I have loved you. Like,
What does loving mean? It means sharing something good with someone. You
I
will.
don't believe in love.
Oh,
either. No.
We were talking about that on the way over.
right?
Love's
Good.
dead.
Oh, but they just get more juicy and more juicy.
Mm.
You want to go there? I feel like we should if we said we.
Let me just
I
take
don't have any ammunition at the moment. I know I do. I just can't talk about it yet. I need to think about it first.
Oh,
So you lead off.
what do we want but you ask a question, sir. I will
Yeah, what was the
follow.
question?
Yeah, what's the
The
question?
question is, well, I guess could you just fill me in on what you were talking about? If you
Why
want
love
to.
is dead.
Yeah. Is there a
So this semester we've been reading Madame Bovary.
oh Madame Bovary?
Madame Bovary and Brothers K.
Thick,
And
thick books.
thick books with a lot of meaning that slaps you in the face the more you think about it. Like I hated Madame Bovary. Like I was just like, this is a terrible book. It's all about just cheating on your husband. Why would I care about this? And then I started living after I read it. And then I realized every person has Madame Bovary in them, right? And that every relationship that you have, right, can either be a Madame Bovary relationship with that person, or it can be like not in a real way. Because Madame Bovary basically just takes her understanding of the world around her and she romanticizes it. And she doesn't fall in love with the things in front of her. She falls in love with the idea of the things. So like her, like one example is a person that, what's his name? Do you remember his name?
Charles?
No, that's her
Leon?
husband. Leon, my boy Leon.
No.
Yeah, so Leon, right? They fall in love. She's already married.
Yep.
Well, they both kind of think that they're in love, but they won't admit it to each other. And one of the things while she's like, you're getting into her mind after this has happened is the fact that she loves the idea of Leon more so when she's just thinking about him and he's not in front of her than when he is in front of her. Yeah. Right. And so when I said that love is dead, this has become a phrase I use way too often. But what I think is that we as men or as mankind, I don't want to make too universal a statement, but I think in a real way we have lost what love is,
Mm,
right? Because no longer is it, I want to go, or it's no longer this idea of sacrifice, right? And that, yeah, we're not living in a perfect world together, and I'm not a perfect person, but we're going to give everything we have to each other, and we're going to build our lives off of that. It more so comes from the fact that if I have an idea in my head, all right, I'm going to make an idea of this person and I'm going to fall in love with that idea. And then that person, I'm not actually loving them while they're in front of me. It's
mm,
just I'm loving that ideal image. And then when that person is in front of me, they're basically become this term that we use called standing reserve. But basically, it's just the fact that when I need something from them, it's there for me. Right. So if I only have the image of that person in my mind, if they go away for a week and they come back, that image is refreshed in my mind. And so they become this thing that I feed off of to have it within myself so that I can be in love with that image of them and not that person.
wow.
And so I still say love is dead.
Mhm. And honestly, I think this is
I'm in
like
so much
this is like the purpose to which like I wrote my thesis on is the
Yes, let's
fact
get to
that
Thomas's
well,
thesis.
I
You want
don't
to hear
want
about the best thesis written by the class of
no, no, no.
2024 right here?
Don't want to talk about thesis, but I do want to talk about why like
Yeah.
every day I see a lack of charity
Uh-huh.
in the cream of the crop of the church
Yeah.
of Christ's fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, we'll die for one another, but we're not gonna live for one another.
That's
And what and here's the thing. What we're called to do every day is we're called to die to self.
Mhm.
yeah.
We're supposed to unite, we're supposed to nail our hands to Christ's hands every single day,
Mhm.
giving ourselves completely to neighbor. And yet, if I need help with something and I go ask, hey, can you drive me to this place because I don't have a car? No, I'm busy right now. Okay, there's legitimate reasons to not always be running around after people. However, there is something to be said for never being charitable towards somebody.
Mhm.
And like I'm one of the biggest offenders of that. Like I really like my alone time. I really like hanging out in my room by myself studying. And when somebody wants to hang out, I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it right now.
That's not what he says. He says, "Yeah, I'll be there," and then he's not
There's
there.
that.
Oh.
Okay,
Oh,
there's that
no.
too. There's outright lying too.
While we're being honest, let's be honest.
No, but like the fact of the matter is that
Made him affirm that he was going to be here 3 times.
hey, it worked.
It worked. All right, continue.
But like the fact of the matter is like we say we love each other
Hmm.
and that's our mindset. Oh yeah, of course I love that person.
Yeah.
But you're not actually every day living like there is this one saint, I forget his name, where he was a very prolific writer
Hmm.
and he'd be writing and a brother monk would come to his cell door and ask him a question mid word, like
Yeah.
on the upswing of writing the T. This saint would stop, put his pen down,
Hmm.
turn to the brother, and say, what do you need? Can I help you with anything?
Hmm.
What's greater than that? Like you're messing up your train of thought for a fellow human being, right? And like that is, if we all were like that, I can't imagine how much like one little tiny community would change.
Yeah.
Like we're too busy talking bad about people, gossiping or complaining about our circumstances. But if we had just turned that around and just like start positively doing small acts for somebody you absolutely hate, like I think that's how God would transform the world. Have you guys ever seen the movie To End All Wars?
No.
Highly recommend. I think it's
Movie review
it's
with Thomas.
yeah. It's a British production. And the only actor I know is no, but here's the thing. Here's the thing.
History started in 1776. Everything before that was a mistake.
Hey, there's a Yankee in it. What's his face? Donald Sutherland, his son plays the Yankee in it, the resident Yankee in it, who's like the most selfish person in the entire movie. But he reformed. But basically, I watched this movie Thursday night and I went to mass Friday morning, and it was the best preparation for mass I could ever have had.
Oh.
So it wasn't a Christian film. It was simply a historical representation of what happened in a Japanese POW camp in Thailand or Laos or one of those places. And it's a bunch of British prisoners, and there's one British prisoner who continually gives himself completely for neighbor.
Wow.
And slowly it spreads, and eventually you have the camp commandant simply incredulous and not understanding what this Christian message is that goes such against the code of Bushido. And anyway, it's a true story, but it's not a Christian movie, but it's the most powerful Christian message I have ever seen in my life. But basically, anyway, that was off topic. But
that was on topic.
It was on topic, but I don't know. Watch it. It's only 2 hours. But it's the hardest, it's the hardest movie I've ever watched in my life.
Wow.
Like Hacksaw Ridge, nothing compared to this.
Wow.
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom, nothing compared to this.
Wow.
Like seriously. Yeah. It's a tough movie. You see like real POW conditions, like inhuman guys who have lost their humanity because they're crawling on the ground. They're just a sack of bones, and they have lost their intellectual capacity because they have been reduced in dignity so much that they have forgotten it.
Yeah.
And they lose like that. And that's what really happened in these POW camps is like you'd have those people. And that's the thing. If you weren't giving yourself completely, if you're always looking for hope to get out of here, eventually you would lose that hope. And once you lose that hope, all of a sudden you lose your status as a human in your own head. And basically, yeah, you see these guys crawling around the ground trying to get crusts of bread. And like merciless beatings and yeah, it's highly recommend.
So is what you're saying that it just takes one person?
It takes
right?
one person.
One person to love for others to love.
I mean, if you think about it, like look at our model, Christ on the cross. Within 90 years, the entire Middle East, Rome, Greece were evangelized. Like the fastest change from one kind of thought or culture to another happened because of one person. Okay, he was God, right?
that is a factor, yeah.
But here's the thing.
His
apostles saw him crucified or rather ran away, but they knew he was crucified, right? And then each one of them followed suit and died themselves. And their disciples
almost all of them
died themselves.
Almost all isn't all.
Except
remember that from the beginning.
hey, technically John died on the cross with Christ. His love was crucified.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, fine. That's
fine. I give it to you.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, and it takes one person.
Yep.
But the key word is emptying yourself. What does that mean?
Okay. Yeah.
What does emptying yourself mean?
That's a good question.
I took a bite of a really bad talk.
And that's the emphasis, of the point. It makes it more dramatic.
It's coming. It's percolating.
Coming.
It's incubating. One, two, three.
Okay, this brings us to theology, especially the theology we've been doing a lot this semester, which is supposed to be moral theology. But I don't know. I feel like I've begun to understand love in a lot more grounded ways. And I think this is just through talking about marriage, right? Because even St. Paul gives the analogy of Christ to church, man to woman, as like the example of love. But if you don't understand what the love is that a man is supposed to have for a wife, you can't understand the love that you are supposed to have for Christ, right? Or that Christ begins to have for his church, right? And it's so interesting because the more you understand man and wife's relationship, the more you understand Christ and the church. And yet Christ and the church is the example for man and wife. It's like this giant circle, right?
Yeah.
Of the perfect.
My
And you
head.
come to understand the
Constantly.
imperfect. And by understanding the imperfect, you can better understand the perfect. But the perfect is the role model for the imperfect. And it's just like, all right, Lord, you're having too much fun there with my mind.
It's true.
But just like, we've been reading a lot of JP2's writings. Fun stuff. But this understanding of mutual self-gift, right, between man and woman, like it's the total gift of self, right? And when we think of love, this is a question that I have. It's like, can you really love anyone truly but your spouse, right? Truly but those people that are next to you? Like, I just don't understand. I was saying that it takes one person. It took Christ, right? Is it that I shouldn't be loving the people in front of me? I should be loving Christ, and by loving Christ, I can love all them. But that just seems like a cop-out answer to me,
Yeah.
right? Like, I want to love the people in front of me, but it's like, what is that? How does that work, right? How can you love, or how ought you love those people in front of you?
Okay. Could you say that you're supposed to love with an emptying love, sacrificial love, oriented towards that person's status towards you? So like you're not gonna love your neighbor in the same way you love your wife. You're
Yep.
not gonna love your kids in the same way you love your wife.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's all about the relationship that the other has to you determines the
it's
love.
I guess it's a love born out of properness, I guess. I
So,
guess.
okay.
Um
But that's interesting because that brings me to my enemy.
Mhm.
What is the love, right? That is proper to my enemy. Like I can understand how
Try the hell out of
No.
it.
no boxing.
No. I was thinking like shells.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. What is it? Artillery.
Artillery. We'll take back the Hagia Sophia from them.
Okay. Do not say the word.
I won't. I'm not.
Don't
I'm
say the
not.
word.
I'm not.
You get
I'm not.
Tom banned on YouTube.
Anyway, let's get back to the topic.
Back to the topic. Besides loving your enemy by bombing them,
Yes.
right? I can understand the relationship. I can understand the relation.
Keep talking. I'm sorry.
Well, Thomas was laughing.
Okay,
I was saying that
Okay.
you should have set this up outside so we could smoke during it, because gosh, that would make the conversation that much better. You had whiskey and smokes. Cool. Next time. Okay.
For sure.
But yeah. So my question is,
Yes.
I can understand if we're gonna base our love off of the relationships that we have with the other, right? I'm gonna give my wife the complete total gift of self, and that's reflected in the conjugal act,
Mhm.
right? I'm gonna give my children, I don't really have a word for it, but it's basically everything but the conjugal act. I don't know. It's like It's like that level of love,
Yes.
right?
It's radical.
It's a radical form of complete self-gift to them.
Yes.
And then there's your neighbor, which God says, love thy neighbor as thyself.
Mhm.
And then it's your enemy, right?
Mhm.
And that's where it gets hard for me.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess that's where we need more than natural abilities, man. That's where it takes the supernatural level of grace to
Mhm.
achieve that type of love.
That's what that's something I have a lot of trouble with.
Yeah.
But Father David tells me all the time. He
Mhm.
says the desire to forgive, the desire to love
Mhm.
is sufficient, but you have to pray about it.
Mhm.
By praying about it, you get more graces
Mhm.
to be able to do that. And as you pray about it, also something natural happens. This is not what he says, but something natural happens by praying about it. It's already on your mind anyway, so you're more conscious of it.
Sure.
So it's not a knee-jerk response anymore because you've been thinking about this for a long time. So like it's a twofold. It's on your consciousness, but also you do need the grace to be able to overcome that natural passion.
Yeah. Because I feel like
And what does that mean? Because like one thing I fall into is okay, how am I supposed to love my enemy? In the sense that
Yeah.
if I'm supposed to love him all out and I just start doing this for him,
Yeah.
am I adding to the problem? Am I even making him a worse person?
interesting.
Because like it, where does justice come in
Mhm.
versus where does love come in?
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't have the prudence to be able to make that decision.
See, but that's the interesting thing is it's required. It's going to come down to the
Yeah.
prudent man, as the
Mhm.
prudent man would define it.
It's always like a
Moral theology. That is the cop out answer of
This
the
is
century.
where I leave civilization and go build a cabin on the mountain.
That's where I'm sending my first shell to your cabin. Only because I loved him. Yeah.
You think that maybe the loving of enemies to love them enough to become your neighbor?
Do you remember De Perfectione?
Yeah.
You probably remember it a lot better than I do.
Mm.
Mostly because you did read. But
Oh.
in De Perfectione, I know that Aquinas lays down like different levels of the perfections in man.
Yeah.
And one of the highest forms, right, is like there's the baseline of, oh, love my neighbor or love my enemy, and the fact that if he comes begging at my doorstep, I'm going to give him drink, right, or food. I'm not going to just neglect him because I hate him.
Right.
Right? It's like that base level of love, right? And he like lays up like two others above it. And ultimately, the top one is basically loving him as a neighbor, right? But that's like the highest perfection of loving your enemy.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you have anything?
Yeah.
Huh.
At least that's what I remember from De Perfectione.
Let me try putting this together in my head. I run into the problem, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's my perception that I need to just get over myself, or maybe it's something legit, and I don't know. But how much are you supposed to kiss the butt of your enemy to make him your friend? Versus, will he ever be your friend if you're constantly kissing his butt?
Okay, but
Or
there's
will he have this sort of disdain for you because, oh, you pitiful creature who's crawling to me for friendship? And that doesn't help.
yeah,
Oh.
I don't think it's that. Right, it's definitely not that. In fact, it's not that you're a pitiful creature crawling to him for friendship,
Mhm.
but it's treating him as a friend
Mhm.
I feel like that's a different thing. It's like crawling to him for friendship, right? Just saying, "Oh, I want to be your friend," right? I want to be your friend. Like you have all like, if you ever like, there's some people that you'll offend, and like that's like their way of like, or that have offended you, and that's their response. It's not just, "Hey, I'm sorry." It's just, "No, now I want to be your friend," right? To make it up to you,
Mhm.
and that's not what I think that we're called to,
Yeah.
right? It's something more radical than that, right? It's not a friendship out of like, because I want this person to forgive me.
Yeah.
It's a friendship. This goes back to the whole, we're created in the image of likeness of God, right? It's
Mhm.
the fact that he too is in the image of God, right? Gives him a self dignity, gives him a self worth that I even need to respect him for. And
Mhm.
you're called to respect him for that much, right? And then beyond that, right? Then if you respect him for the fact that he is created in the image and likeness of God, then you can begin to love him for the fact that he is created in the image and likeness of God.
Mhm.
Eventually, just loving him for himself, right? But it seems like that's like a hierarchy that you can walk up,
Mhm.
which seems to be different than just crawling to him
Yeah.
for friendship, which just seems like
Mm.
you're doing it for the wrong reason at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Fair statement. Yeah.
So how does that come off looking like I guess
Yeah, that's
could you put that in particulars?
yes, I could. So if someone does me wrong, I'm not going to vindictively try to get them back behind their back, right? I'm not going to, even though they might not know it's me, I'm not going to try and hurt them. Or worse, I'm not going to try and, right, pretend to want to be their friend just so that they can think better of me, right? It really comes down to the fact that I need to recognize that I have failed, right? And the fact that I have an enemy, that's number one.
Mhm.
Recognize that that is a failure on my part and try to mend that as best as I can. But if I can't mend the fact that I have an enemy, that means that I'm going to treat them with respect and love, right? Which means that I'm not going to go out of my way to help them, right? But if the opportunity presents itself, right? If they need a ride up,
Mhm.
I'm going to give them a ride up.
Mhm.
Right? It's like it's the little things in life, right? Like I'm not going to be a person that is just going to be vindictive towards them. I'm going to help them when they need to. And like I'm not going to seek them out to try and like gain this false sense of friendship, but it's just that if they have fallen, I am there to pick them up.
Mm.
Right? If I am the first one that crosses their path of the Samaritan beaten in the street, I'm going to be the one that helps them. That seems to be what it means to love your neighbor.
Okay, but
I like that answer.
here is the thing. Yeah, I like it too.
That's true.
But I think there is
This cheese is really good.
it's really
I know.
Never want to eat for
I
Saudi
feel like
again.
there is a step further that needs to be made because I have had differences with people and I've had that mentality. Like I'll be there if they need help, I'll love them, I'll pray for them, and I respect them or and I'll have respect for them because they're made in the image of God, not who they are, but because God is in them.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like if something bad happens, they're not going to come to me because we're enemies.
Yeah.
And I may not even know about it. So like to a certain extent, there is some active agency to be able to do those charitable works for the person.
Right.
And I think to a degree, the only thing you can do is pray for them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was one thing. I didn't even mention prayer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but
Oh,
I feel like that's a good
I think it was implied enough. But
yeah.
sometimes that's probably the only thing you can do, as in like, you know, Franklin Roosevelt shouldn't have been going over to Germany asking Hitler to be a friend or whatever, but he should have been praying for him,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
that's a bare minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
So
was. Oh, wait, maybe I got the day. Oh,
so maybe there are certain times when you can't have that personal
Fact check.
agency, but I feel like more often than we think
hmm
we do, we have the ability to show them like acts of charity. And that's when it gets sort of dicey, whereas is it crawling to them or is it actual love, but it has to be like real, in which case it's not crawling to them.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have that chance more often than we know.
Oh.
And I just don't know. So generally in these situations I end up just praying for them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in that position to act, I guess.
Yeah.
But I feel like I should be.
I think it's more so that you ought, if the opportunity presents itself, you must be disposed to acting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's why I use the example of the beaten Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's not like anyone intended for that person to be back there, or like was like, I'm gonna walk by because I know this person is hurt.
Yeah.
Right. It's the fact that they were walking by and they saw that
And
person.
the person was hurt.
Right. And so it's just always being open to helping or to being there for your enemy. There's just, I think, a great mark of a person who is capable of love, even though love is dead. Nah, love's not dead. Just my hopes of love.
Well, that's an interesting connection there because with I'm thinking Madame Bovary, like Madame Bovary with the loving your enemy.
Yeah.
Because let's see. So Madame Bovary falls into the problem where she loves the image and the idea of a person.
Yep.
And the enemy almost is like the reality of what the evil of someone.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Yes. So because
Yeah.
at the end, when she sees the blind man, right, and she has to face the ugliness of the world, right, and she is drawn out of this romantic image of the world that she has crafted around herself. She's slapped in the face with the reality before her death,
Yeah.
right, like experiencing a horrid image to her, like, or experiencing the enemy of her romanticism, right? It's just such a beautiful image. The French really know how to paint an image and make love.
They do. Yeah.
At least that's what I hear. Cut that.
Well, yeah, because it's like she's seeing the thing that she despises the most, which is which she thinks
Ugliness.
is ugliness.
Yep.
But that blind man might be. Well, I think it's implied that blind man's a better person than she is. And then I think with loving your enemy, it's when we confront that someone was wrong. They weren't bad, just being bad, they were bad to you. So you got to see their evil. And you're like, oh, I don't want to respond to that because you don't want to be associated with that evil. And you're like, and there's also that fear that that might happen to you again. You don't want that to happen again. And so it's almost like when that happens, like the enemy hurts you in some way, you are now asked to love that person back in the way that you should be actually loving them in reality. And you can't have the idealistic and you can't stick with what happened to them, but actually be real with them.
Yeah.
It's like the two dichotomies almost of like what love, the false loves.
Yeah.
Come into one thing.
And that's the thing. Like, from one perspective, the world is messy, painful, dirty, dark. All these really, really
Only one.
only one perspective, and
Like in only one perspective is it clean.
and it's and it's really, really bad like that.
Yep.
And so whatever image you have of a person of any sort of lifestyle, it's going to crumble immediately when it reaches the harsh reality of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so you better have somebody in your corner. You better have a real person who is dying to self. No. who is dying to self. And in that act of dying, that's when you see some sort of order come forth.
Yeah.
And that's the love that actually colors the world as it should be.
Yep.
It's the stark comparison between what's dirty and grim out here
Mhm.
versus what is self-emptying, and that is what's gonna color the world.
Mhm.
And I mean, as Christians, like we have that primarily through Christ,
Yep.
right? But also like in the particulars, you need to be looking for that in the particulars. You
Mhm.
can't be going after this image of who this girl is or whatever.
Mhm.
But it better be a real flesh and blood person who actually has the good of you in mind
Yeah.
as well. And of course it's reciprocated too, or it should be. But no, it's reciprocated.
Yeah.
And that should be what colors the world. Pain colors pain, but it's good pain that colors pain most. You know,
Sorry.
that was a bad analogy, but
No,
don't attack me for it.
No, I was just hoping you could say more about the end.
The end.
Yeah, what you just said. Pain colors pain. Good pain colors pain.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I just want to hear a little bit more about that.
So it's like I just watched this movie. It was Tom Cruise. Which one?
Was it a good movie?
It was about the German army during World War II. And he was
Is this the one about the art? No.
no.
Assassination.
It was Valkyrie.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I
I've never
never.
seen it. But
Okay.
Continue.
So here's the deal. He get this guy who tried to save his country
Mhm.
gets sent in front of the firing squad
Hmm.
and dies joyfully.
Oh, wow.
But there's another guy, an unwilling martyr. He gets sent in front of the firing squad
Mhm.
and dies very unwillingly.
Yeah.
Like they pinned this German general with a fake accusation, and he died for the assassination plot along with these martyrs, right? This guy's death was absolutely horrible, scary, not wanted. This guy fully embraced it and loved it,
Hmm.
right? And there's that difference in perspective. Because we're always going to have pain. We're always in the valley of tears. But when you unite it to God's suffering and you direct it towards another person,
Mhm.
all of a sudden you want that pain. You're like, bring some more on. I can take it all day. Right. Like for myself, like getting off nicotine was a really, really hard thing. And then I was like, I'll sacrifice this for this other person.
Yeah.
I've thought about it a few times, but I've actually done it this time, and I never was able to endure the pain for myself alone.
Yeah.
It was unbearable.
Okay, but
I
isn't
can do it
that
for someone else?
Isn't that intentional pain?
It is intentional.
that's-
Right.
Love
That
is
seems
intentional.
I know, but it seems like what's important about this is like, or intentionally accepting it or intentionally inflicting the pain on yourself, right? Allows it to be good pain,
Mhm.
right? When it's like, if I get this horrible thing that happens to me, and if I don't accept the fact that it has happened, I'm going to live in that hatred of the pain and the hatred of myself and all that.
Mhm.
But if that pain comes and I just accept it and embrace it, you're going to come out stronger. It's like the saying, pain is weakness leaving the body.
Yeah.
Right. But even like, I think this is something like fasting or like giving up certain things, right? Especially now we're in the season of Lent, right? We do this for a purpose,
Mhm.
right? We're going to give up these things that we all enjoy for the sake of another,
Uh-huh.
right? For a purpose. And like having that intentionality with the pain, right, makes it not a bad pain, but a good pain.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a fruitless pain. It's a pain that has a purpose to it and that we can now see the purpose in it. Like you with the nicotine.
Mhm.
Yep. You talk about nicotine addiction.
Was it a bad addiction?
It wasn't
Not as bad as mine.
it wasn't that bad.
Okay, but I would
been-
like to add to the not bad nicotine addiction. He did 59 milligrams of Zen in a day.
Yeah, I was on a car trip and I did a whole like 15 packets of like the 6 milligrams between South Carolina and Virginia.
So that's more than wait. Let's do the math real quick. 15 times 6.
I can't do that high.
Let's see. That's 90 milligrams of Zen.
That's 90 cigarettes.
Wait, is it only 1 milligram per cigarette?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I'm
But
good.
you're ingesting.
Yeah.
But like, here's the thing. Like, I don't know. For me, I'm either all or nothing. Like, if I'm
Oh,
doing
yeah.
it, I'm going hard. You know.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I wasn't doing that every single day.
Yeah. No, that was just totally the what?
But here's the thing. Since October, I've been going through about 2 to 3 Kansas in a week.
Pretty good clip.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll take a day off. But this is the first time I've gone. Well, Saturday morning, it will be 2 weeks. So,
That's awesome.
but yeah. But like, yeah. And the hard part is that somebody gave me a half a can of Zen. I was like, I'll start
Oh.
fasting from this after I use the last one. And I used the last one, and then someone gave me a half can. So every single morning I wake up and I see that can of Zen sitting
That's
in
my boy.
drawer. And I'm like, you know what? It makes it a bigger prayer for this person.
There you go.
Because because now it's in my grasp. I can break down anytime I want to.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah. I wouldn't say I'm addicted. I haven't had proper withdrawals. I haven't had like
That's fair.
migraines or things like that. But
Yeah.
the appetite is always there. Like, I'd always pop one in when I watched a movie, or I always popped one in when I was going to read along reading or whatever.
You're basically describing our day in the life of a WCC
Yeah.
student. That's every day, all day.
Like pretty much anytime I'm not eating, that's an opportunity to get a buzz. But yeah,
I think it's interesting. Like I started hearing studies about how nicotine is good for your thinking, and like that's why I know a lot of people.
it's good for muscle rehab too.
Yeah, like I know a lot of people now that just use Zen to focus in class. Especially my friends with like ADHD. Right, they take Zen before class so that they can like
Oh.
focus in it because it just gives them this like alertness and like this focus that they don't have otherwise.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I know nicotine is such an interesting thing. Like I've heard that it definitely helps with the brain.
Yeah.
I've heard it can like increase testosterone, different
Yep.
things like
Mm.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
we thriving over here.
We got bourbon and nicotine. Yeah.
All the essentials.
Yeah, it's like, but the thing I heard was probably the most dangerous part about nicotine is that it causes your body to release dopamine quickly, and so it trains yourself to not want to work for dopamine. So like you want to just take a pill for it rather than like doing a process of activity or activities that will actually release the dopamine because you're getting closer to a goal. So, I listened to this from Andrew Huberman on Huberman Lab.
Oh yeah,
He's a
like
good
him.
guy.
Yeah.
He was just saying that, yeah, he thinks that if you're under 25, he thinks it's going to rewire your brain so it's harder to work.
You're okay.
You're good.
I cut a year.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
I think it's because it's like the way our brain fully forms by 25 or something like that. He was just saying that.
That takes in for the rest of your life, man.
There you go. Good excuse.
Tucker Carlson is my hero.
I mean, it works well for him. So
Problem is, I just love taking it. Like
I never met someone
I just
who
love it.
smoked a pipe for a nicotine high until I met this man.
Like
Yeah.
that's next level.
I'd not smoke for 3 days so that my pipe on the third day, the first pipe on the third day, I'd get a buzz on it. That's dedication.
That
That is dedication to not smoking cigarettes right there.
Yeah.
I just plunged into the darkness of the
Well,
cigarette.
See, here's the thing.
I'm out. I'm out of the darkness.
I was never tempted towards cigarettes because I'm too afraid about like I love my lungs. I love my lung capacity and I want
I like
greater lung
breathing, too.
capacity.
Yeah, that's nice.
Cigarettes just kill that. So
Not necessarily.
Well, Zen is probably the safest form of nicotine, is what I've heard. churches or
The only
these or these.
yeah,
Yeah,
the only thing I've heard about it is that because it's synthetic nicotine, they
Yeah.
don't know much about it.
that's fair.
Oh, synthetic.
It's
Yeah.
synthetic.
That's
yeah.
why if I was to pick like the perfect
It'll be
vehicle
red.
for it would be Red Man.
Red
Red Man Chew.
I was wondering if one day they're gonna come out with like an IV.
Oh, they will.
nicotine or
Oh, there's
something.
no doubt.
That
already exists.
probably.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
got to somehow, some way.
man, good stuff.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy the things that man can make for himself?
Mhm.
You know, as a constantly evolving creatures.
We're back to
I had to bring us back to the beginning for
As
the
God
end.
once said.
Isn't it interesting though? Like, there's so many big questions that we're asking ourselves. And like, you know, I know you gave us the Bible and everything, God, but could you give us some more? Like,
Just give us a little bit more.
The divine revelation of your word wasn't enough.
That's like
Your son becoming incarnate wasn't enough.
yeah.
I need more.
It's like Ivan
Ivan
Karamazov.
Karamazov.
He's like,
oh yeah,
take away our free will. We'd rather not have free will
Hot take.
than to.
He is so right.
ooh,
The Grand Inquisitor messed me up. Bro, that book says too many truths in it.
isn't that wild?
It's wild. And what was scary about it is the day before, me and another classmate were arguing about the role of conscience and authority before I read the Grand Inquisitor.
Oh,
And it was just like, this is terrifying to me right now. Terrifying because we were arguing about the role that the church should play in deciding what mass is proper.
wow.
And this is a big topic, so we don't have to go into it. But basically, we were arguing about what role conscience has, and he was saying if the church says it, that is the authority, that is what you must go with. And my argument was, but my conscience says otherwise. What about my relationship between Christ and truth? Right. And so it's the role of like, okay, the church or yourself. Right. And then I read the Grand Inquisitor, and it was, we as the church has taken on the truth. We are doing what you, Christ, have failed to do. Right. And it was just like, okay,
Oh,
if he can make that argument, right, that means that the burden of conscience is on the individual, right? Like just because an authority says it, even if that authority is the church, it doesn't mean that we can just throw away our conscience.
no, right.
Yep.
Well,
But
Yeah. No.
I mean, like
And
that's
that is scary. Like using. I know.
terrifies me, and I don't know how to respond to it. And there's just all these parts of like infallibility and blah 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 blah. That just like there's so many different strings and so many statements that we have to hold true. But
well. At the same time, though, that would be doctrinal.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, as an example, as we've all seen, the, the church isn't always the church.
yeah,
So it's like if you're
I
believing,
want to say that though.
well, yeah, but the thing is, though, it's like,
So problematic when I go here.
I mean, the church is also like the people, the sense, the sense.
well, yeah,
exactly.
So then you have that thrown into the mix.
Oof, curfew. It's 10 o'clock. We're okay.
we should probably wrap up soon.
Probably soon. We could do this part two.
We should do part two.
We could do Thomas's thesis. I felt singled out tonight.
Oh, that'd be fun.
We talked about it. That
No.
was the point I wanted.
We can talk about
thesis to make was that to
whoa.
plug your data.
Let me just give a recap of Thomas's thesis. Do you want it in explicit terms or not? You get to choose right now.
I'm going to correct you when it is when you start saying inaccurate things about what I said. You just say whatever you want.
Receiving the Eucharist is analogous. Is that a good word?
No, it's not analogous at all.
It's not.
Receiving the Eucharist is the perfection.
Platonic form. Yeah, I'd say it's a platonic
Okay.
form.
We'll go into this next time. Okay, there you go.
Oh. That's a big question. Yeah, like that's a pretty big
It's
claim.
a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah.
There is, and as much as my thesis advisor wanted me to pull from Pope John Paul II and Theology of the Body, I didn't use any recent sources.
Nope.
I used one, Benedict, and he was commenting on Plato. And that's it. He was just clarifying one thing. That's the only modern source I used. Everything else was the patristics.
It was
Whoa.
truly impressive.
Yeah.
I only read it
Sure.
about 40 minutes before it was due because I was formatting the entire thing. But what glimpses I got from it, it was very good. I look forward to reading it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have another podcast for that.
Yeah, you will.
If you would like to read it, I will send it to you.
Sure.
Okay.
You should read it. I'll send you mine too.
Yeah, please do.
Yep. The one thing I'm proud to put my name on.
No, like seriously, like
Dude, would you write a thesis? It's like I did this. Yeah,
and
I've proven something.
Yeah.
And dude, mine like similar to Thomas's, where it's like, yeah, there's books about this now. Mine is like my advisor gave me no recent books, and basically was like, you're gonna do this from first sources, right? And so I'm like making these arguments about Rome being corrupted by philosophy, and I got terrified about it. I was like, I don't even know if I believe this right now. And like in a frantic, this is like a week before the draft is due. I'm like, I have written every other section. I have all these parts. Like, here's what I have written.
Uh-huh.
He's like, oh, have I not given you this book? I'm like, no, you haven't given me this book. He's like, starts explaining. He's like, oh yeah, this book's all about what you're writing. I'm like,
Could have
did you just? This is a week before the draft, and you're giving me a 300-page book right now? Like, just like, but it felt so good. I guess this is the point of the story. Is like, felt so good to be able to like do it without modern authors,
Yeah.
right? And being able to look at the text that yourself.
you,
And be like, I did this,
you
right?
avoid so many contentions
Yep.
when you just go back to the ancients because
Yep.
all of those contentions have been gone by like 500 years. Like
Right.
nobody's
Oh, boy.
arguing with Saint John Chrysostom anymore.
Yeah.
But people are arguing with like Vatican II documents. So
Yep.
like don't use those. Like, okay, that's a different topic, but just don't use those if you want the message for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I found enough proof in the patristics and scripture, and
How many quotes did you have?
I had for scriptural quotes, it was in the 70s, I think.
In your thesis?
Dude,
And then everything else was in the 40s.
you had like 140 something quotes.
And of course, the scriptural
You
ones
topped me
were
out.
parentheses. The scriptural were like inline parentheses.
Yeah.
But I was
That's insane.
I think I got to like the longest I was at like 87.
Still.
Oh, okay.
A lot.
On classes theses, the average was like 35
yeah.
on page count.
Dang.
Oh, dude, we wrote some books. Like the book of our theses that they're making one is gonna be like I bet it's gonna be a
It'll be
2-part
fun.
volume. There ain't no
Dude.
way they're fitting in a single one.
I was writing and I got to page 41, and then I was like, I still have two sections left. So I put it down to 11-point font.
Yep.
And I ended with 36 pages of 11-point font.
I refused to go
Dang.
into 11-point font. I was like, my advisor, like I brought him the 43-page draft, right? And he was like, I want this at 30. I was like, but I don't want to cut it to 30. It was like,
a big
That's the thing. I feel like
I
my
cut-
topic
I
was so
cut-
lightly touched as
Mhm.
it is.
Oh yeah, like I cut out entire sections. Just like, yeah, I wrote all this. I guess it's not necessary, like or utterly essential for my argument. So I take like a 4 paragraph section, like 2 pages, turn it into like 3 sentences, and be like, okay, I guess that should suffice.
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a shame. 'Cause I feel like even though it's like you're able to condense ideas, there's so much in that what you already wrote that you're like, oh, I just want to share this with someone.
Dude, mine could be a book. Like I could,
Yeah.
I could write a book on it. I wouldn't do a very good job, but I know there could be a book about it.
And definitely I want to revisit mine and like I feel like I just so poorly tied it up at the end. Like I should have talked about marriage a lot more. I should have talked about like
Yeah.
um
Like-
relationship between child and parents much more. And
When you put a page count on it, though,
yeah,
it's so hard. Like you think that when you're a freshman, you think 40 pages is so much. You're like,
I know.
how
I've been living
could I
Yeah.
ever
in
write
fear.
40 pages? I literally was like, Kirsten, I'm gonna write a 20-page thesis and it's gonna be on. And I called her and I was like, I have 41 pages. And she's like, you have what?
I've been living
Oh.
in fear of thesis for 4 years.
Yeah. Dude, like,
It's just the thing that I was just frightened of, terrified.
oh yeah. It's like, and it's just crazy. Like it changes your whole mind shift on papers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, cause you're like, oh my God,
8-page paper.
a 5-page paper. Right. And then I think I wrote 15 pages of my thesis in a day.
Wow.
Like I sat down and I just like hammered it out. And it's just like, you're just like, as soon as you like get this like monumental feat done, you're like, I have done it.
Yes.
I can do the intellectual thing.
Yeah.
Finally, after 4 years, I am affirmed in my knowledge. It's just like, it's such a cool experience.
Yes.
It really is.
I thought it was honestly the easiest paper I wrote.
Wow.
Okay, it was the most
I don't know.
enjoyable
Oh,
paper I read.
I agree with
Maybe,
that.
maybe that's a good way to put it.
But
Easiest one I ever wrote was on Thales 4 fragments. I wrote a 5-page
because everything
paper
else is
on
imagination.
Thales 4 fragments.
That's awesome.
Best paper I've ever written. But
That does it.
not oration. The thesis is so like I get like it's enjoyable, and you do so much research and you love it,
Yeah.
and so that makes it a lot more enjoyable to
Yeah.
work on,
Yeah.
to like think about, because like half the project of writing is thinking.
Yeah.
And so just like if you're enjoying what you're thinking about versus it being just
And
some book
that's-
that you were forced to read, it's like, no, I picked this topic. I'm gonna read it.
That's key to it. I've had 2 people tell me, yeah, I wish I picked a thesis that I was actually interested in.
Oh.
And there is like, yeah, there's a few people who like hated their thesis because they had this question that they weren't exactly invested in. And that's why it's like, yeah, like do what you love.
Yeah. No, 'cause it makes it miserable if you don't. And like even me, like I was on fire about my topic when I started. And then by the end of it, you're like, this is a dead horse that I am still beating. Like I remember my oration, I was like, I don't want to talk about this. Right. Like I'm just like, I have done too much with this. But then like it just takes like one conversation with someone about it, and you're like the fire is relit. And
Okay.
you're just like, oh, I want to do this again, right? Like I still have fight in me.
Uh-huh.
I ain't down yet.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let you go.
Yeah, we should probably. We have an
Yeah.
authoritarian regime over us, and it is necessary that we leave.
Oh, it was a pleasure, guys.